Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 14 waiver wire ads for week number 10 of the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we break down all of these waiver wire pickups that you should be making prior to week number 10, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 10 waiver wire ads for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with my number one waiver wire ad of the week, and that is Cedric Tillman, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are on bye this week with the Green Bay Packers, the Las Vegas Raiders, as well as the Seattle Seahawks. But if Cedric Tillman, for some reason, is available in your league, you need to not just walk, you need to run like the Flash straight to the waiver wire to pick him up. He's currently rostered in 58% of leagues on Yahoo. So if you play on ESPN, CBS, NFL Sleeper, any of those other fantasy football platforms, then the rostership percentage might be slightly different, or in some cases, there might be a drastic difference from platform to platform. So Cedric Tillman was the wide receiver 11 in PPR in week 9 up against the Chargers. Now, these finish stats on the week are prior to Monday Night Football, because I'm not going to be able to rub the crystal ball and tell you exactly where the Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers and quarterbacks, tight ends, running backs finish before the game actually happens. So Cedric Tillman, wide receiver 11 in PPR, 6 catches on 11 targets for 75 yards and a touchdown. Over the last 3 weeks, he has had over 9 targets in every single game, over 70 receiving yards in all games, and 3 total touchdowns with Jameis Winston under center. Look, I get Jameis didn't look as good last week up against the Chargers, right? Jameis Winston did regress in a way, but the Chargers defense is solid, and Cedric Tillman still put up numbers. So with Jameis Winston under center, with the bad man Deshaun Watson gone, I really do believe that Cedric Tillman is a wide receiver 2/flex option every single week, and in plus matchups, he could easily finish inside of the top 6, top 5 at the wide receiver position. At number 2, we got my main man, Mike Licky on my Gesicki, tight end of the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens this week on Thursday Night Football, currently rostered in 13% of leagues on Yahoo. He was the tight end number 1 last week up against the Las Vegas Raiders. He had 5 receptions on 6 targets for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, back-to-back games with 6 or more targets and 70 or more yards. Now, his tight end mate, Eric All Jr., has torn his ACL, which is obviously terrible. The guy in his rookie season was looking very good, but for fantasy, ultimately, this does solidify Mike Gesicki as the tight end 1 on the team. Now, in terms of snap counts, Drew Sample played 76% last week, Mike Gesicki 36%, and Eric All Jr. 20%, but Sample's high snap count could be because the Raiders were getting their back blown out and the Cincinnati Bengals decided to go more in the way of Drew Sample. But even with Sample playing all those snaps, Gesicki still had 5 receptions on 6 targets for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I am not one to worry at all. I really do believe without Eric All now, it's a very clear situation where Gesicki is the guy. Now, is Gesicki the best tight end in the National Football League? Fuck no, baby. I don't even know if he would be considered a top 10 or top 12 tight end, but in terms of usage, he could easily rip off multiple tight end top 10, top 5 games on the season, especially if T. Higgins, who continues to just be permanently banged up, misses yet another game. And next up, we move on into my third waiver wire ad, and that's going to be Jaylen Warren, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Commanders in Washington this week. 42% roster on Yahoo, which to me was a little bit surprising. I would have thought, if I had to guess, he would be rostered in 60, 70+% of leagues. So the Steelers snap counts for the running back position week 7 and week 8. It is important to note they were on bye last week. So week 7, Najee Harris played 49%, Jaylen Warren 51%. Week 8, Harris 59%, Warren 39%. The last week prior to the bye was up against the Giants in prime time. 9 carries for 46 yards, as well as 2 receptions on 3 targets for 13 yards. Now, I'm not going to sit here and fondle the balls of Jaylen Warren like it is a hernia exam, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Jaylen Warren is this fantastic running back that's clearly going to take over from Jaylen Warren or from Najee Harris and become the number 1 guy on the team, but there's a strong argument to be made that he's more talented than Najee Harris and that it is potentially possible as we get deeper and deeper into the season. And with Russell Wilson potentially leading this offense to be even better, that Jaylen Warren could take over. So even if he doesn't take over, he is an elite handcuff. Knock on wood, we're not going to root for injuries for Najee Harris, but if Najee Harris was to get whacked Soprano style, then Jaylen Warren could end up being a very reliable running back too for you. If not, he's a guy that in dire situations you could play as your flex or your running back too. Next up, we move to Jauan Jennings, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. Jennings currently rostered in 50% of leagues on Yahoo. Now, the expectation prior to the bye week is that Jauan Jennings will be able to return after the bye week, which would be this week in week 10. He has been out for 2 straight games with a lingering hip injury. Now, without Brandon Ayuk, I strongly believe that Jauan Jennings will be the wide receiver number 2 on this team behind Deebo Samuel. Back in week 3, he had 11 receptions on 12 targets for 175 yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns in that game. And while there is a higher chance that Sydney Sweeney is under my desk right now, topping me off like her name was Monica Lewinsky, over Jennings putting up 46 and a half fucking fantasy points again, he should become a reliable wide receiver 3/flex option for you, especially if the 49ers kick things into high gear with Christian McCaffrey returning at number 5. We got Jeudy, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns, who are on bye this week. 48% rostered on Yahoo. Another guy where I was genuinely shocked how Jauan Jennings isn't owned in more leagues, only 50%, and Jerry Jeudy, 48%. Again, there's going to be people in the comment section, Nick, in my leagues, these guys aren't available. Well, that's why we get deeper and deeper into the weeds as we get farther into today's video. And also, if you have questions about players that I don't talk about, ask down below in the comment section. So Judge Jeudy was the wide receiver 25 last week up against the Chargers, 7 receptions on 11 targets for 73 yards. Jeudy played 100% of the snaps, which is kind of crazy, like hearing anyone played 100% of the snaps unless they're a quarterback, because normally it's like, oh, they played 98, right? They had a breather on the sideline. They had to go get some Gatorade or water or whatever they're drinking. So normally it's like 98%, but 100% for Mr. Jeudy. Cedric Tillman, 96%. Elijah Moore, 76%. I think the target hierarchy in this offense is very clear with Jameis Winston under center. It's going to be either Jeudy or Cedric Tillman leading the wide receiver room, and then the other guy, the odd man out, will be number 2. Njoku's going to get his, and then Elijah Moore is going to pick up the scraps. In some games, Elijah Moore could pop off, but normally it's going to be Cedric Tillman or Jeudy with the most amount of targets, and those are going to be the 2 guys playing the most amount of snaps. Again, I don't want to play with Jameis Winston's balls like he's a fushigi, but what I want to do is tell you that under Jameis Winston, the Browns offense is going to be significantly better. They're not going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, but they are going to be an offense that is able to actually have reliable fantasy football wide receivers be startable, which is something that was fucking impossible under Deshaun Watson. So again, while I'm not going to sit here and bang the drum and say Jeudy is this electric player, because frankly, I don't think Jeudy lived up to his expectations out of college, where everyone was giving him the Sukala Mink, the Hawk Tua special coming out of college, out of Alabama when he got drafted by the Broncos. But ultimately, this isn't meant to take a dump on the chest of Jerry Jeudy, Cleveland Steamer style, right? What I'm trying to tell you is that sure, while he hasn't lived up to expectations in his career, he is a competent wide receiver in a competent offense that is startable. It is as easy as ABC. 1, 2, 3. At number 6, we got Quentin Johnston, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Chargers, going up against the Atlanta Titans, the Tennessee Titans, at home in LA this week. 16% rostered on Yahoo for QJ. Now, he was the wide receiver 7 last week up against the Browns. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 118 yards and a touchdown in his return from injury game. Now, I, for one, am very hesitant to truly believe in Quentin Johnston. Why? Because last year it appeared that the guy was trying to play football as the first ever wide receiver with no hands, right? He couldn't catch anything. He was the definition of butterfingers. But following Halloween, he didn't have butterfingers because he caught 4 of his 5 catches for 108, or 4 of his 5 targets for 118 yards and a touchdown. So again, this is a very, very, very run-heavy offense. We are going to talk about that every week with the Chargers. They are a team that wants to jam the ball down the throat of the defense. They want to play smash-mouth football, old school, vintage, leather, helmet football. But ultimately, they still have to pass. And if Quentin Johnston continues to be the number 1 wide receiver, which he was early on in the season, then QJ is going to be valuable. Again, they still have Ladd McConkey, though, so I don't want to full-on jump in the Quentin Johnston bandwagon when that bandwagon could end up crashing here. At number 7, we got Big Dick Bo Nix, quarterback of the Denver Broncos, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. This week, 34% rostered on Yahoo. Quarterback 14 last week up against the Ravens. 19 completions on 33 attempts for 223 yards and 1 pick with 6 rushes for 36 yards. Last week was one of the worst performances out of Bo Nix on the season, and he was still able to have a halfway decent game. His upside is so much higher than what we saw up against the Ravens, and in more positive matchups, Bo Nix has the upside to not just be like a top 12, like quarterback 10 to 12 type of a game. I'm talking about where he could be like the quarterback 5 or the quarterback number 3. So if you're in need of a quarterback 2, right, you want to wrap a condom around your team prior to the playoffs, you want to be as safe as possible. So hey, if my quarterback goes down, or maybe you're a Dak Prescott owner, or maybe your quarterback's on bye, I don't love this matchup this week against the Chiefs. I think it would be foolish to pretend that this matchup up against the Chiefs is super fruitful. This is going to be his best game yet because, frankly, up against the Chiefs defense, who in my opinion have one of the best, at least a top 5 defense in the NFL, I'm not going to sit here and advocate and say Bo Nix is must start. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Violet Myers, I do believe that in better matchups, which he has going deep down the stretch of the season, Bo Nix could have great success for your fantasy football team. At number 8, we have somebody touching my Legette, Xavier Legette, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Giants. It's a home game, but it's in Germany. 27% rostered on Yahoo for Mr. Legette. But before we talk about Xavier Legette and the rest of the waiver wire ads, plus at the end we're going to be talking about some handcuffs, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, you'll be able to get your free pick, which tonight is Patrick Mahomes higher than half a total yard, plus a first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. If you're watching this after Monday Night Football already kicked off and you're like, Nick, what happens now? If you sign up, you'll either get an NBA player higher than half a total point, or an NFL player higher than half of a total yard. So you get the free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You match your free pick plus another pick, and if both your picks hit, you'll get 3 times what you enter into your pick'em. If you put in multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. So again, sign up with promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description on Underdog, and you'll get that free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So Xavier Legette, last week, I was a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean I was way too early on the Jalen Coker bandwagon. I was a cokehead, and it didn't end up working. He only played 45% of the snaps, and this was a solid game out of Legette. I got too invested in the head coach of the team, Kanas, coming out and just giving some fellatio to Jalen Coker, and I believe too early. I'm not off the bandwagon yet because I do think he's talented, but let's call a spade a spade. If you have to play one of the guys, it would be Legette. Wide receiver 27 last week up against the Saints. 4 receptions on 6 targets for 33 yards and a touchdown, back-to-back games with a touchdown. But until targets truly increase, and he's getting more than 6 targets, right? Or unless I feel confident in the 6 targets coming his way, I don't really love the idea of starting him. I get there's the upside, and it might be Bryce Young. There's a potential that it's Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, as well in Germany. But if he can stay consistent as the wide receiver 1 without Deontay Johnson, I like Legette. But Thielen's coming back, and it's like, I don't want to put all my eggs into the Legette basket because I know that could heavily lead to disappointment. But if he's available, I would pick him up and stash him on your bench. The snap counts last week up against the Saints in a win. It was awesome to see the Carolina Panthers get a win with Bryce Young. It feels like Bryce Young is just down bad. Like, you could just see him on the sideline when he wasn't starting. The guy looked fucking sad, and I was just happy to see him smile again. I have no ties to the Panthers, no ties to Bryce Young, but it's always sad when you just see like this guy that's supposed to be the guy and it just doesn't work out and they just can him so early in his career. It was good to see him get the win. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but that's how I feel. So snap counts, David Moore, 87%, Legette, 83%, Coker, 45%, and Mingo, 28% last week. Now we move on into waiver wire ad number 9. Turn the page. Jalen Tolbert. His name's Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys and the ASS, our capital. Going up against the Eagles, not the Dirty Birds, those are the Falcons. They played the Dirty Birds last week. The Birds, 23% rostered on Yahoo. Lamb is dealing with a sprained AC joint. Never good. The injury is not considered to be serious, though. Something you want to monitor. Allegedly, like in reality, according to Adam Schefter, he has a chance to play on Sunday. If he is out, even without Dakota Prescott, Tolbert would lock in as the wide receiver 1. He was the wide receiver 36 last week against Atlanta. 3 receptions on 6 targets for 19 yards and a touchdown. Again, if you are scavenging the bottom of the barrel for a start without Mr. Prescott under center, sure, there is a whole lot of risk with Tolbert, but again, if you're super down bad, I guess you could play him, but again, more of a stash until we see kind of how the offense looks without Dak, but honestly, it can't look much worse because that offense, you smell it through the screen. It was terrible. Next up, we move on to player number 10 here, Jalen McMillan. Jalen McMoneybags, wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the Niners at home in Tampa. 34% rostered on Yahoo. Now, the Bucs have yet to play tonight, so we are going to have to see how McMillan plays. So, back-to-back games before tonight, because again, we don't know what the fuck's going to happen. He has had 7 or more targets. The problem is the guy has butterfingers. The problem is the guy cannot catch the ball. Hopefully, tonight, it's all sorted. He goes out there, he looks good. He gets his 7 targets, and instead of catching like 3 or 4 balls, he catches 6 or maybe 5. You know, I'd be happy with that. So once we see what happens, we may be able to move McMillan up a ton or just kind of stick him here, because without Godwin for the rest of the season, I would be very confident in McMillan based on what he did out of college if he could just catch the ball at the NFL level. At number 11, we move to Hunter Henry, tight end of the New England Patriots, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. 36% rostered on Yahoo for Henry. Tight end 8 last week against the Titans. 7 receptions on 8 targets for 56 yards for Mr. Hunter Henry. 3 straight games with Drake May under center. He has had over 12 fantasy points. The game in between was the game where Drake May started, and then he got the concussion, and Jacoby Brissett played the rest of the game. So he should, in my opinion, be a reliable low-end tight end 1 to high-end tight end 2, meaning like anywhere, most weeks from tight end 10 to like 14, as long as Drake May can stay healthy, the volume should be very reliable. So that makes Hunter Henry a fine start weekly. At number 12, we got Taysom Hill. So we've got kind of 2 ends of the spectrum here. We got a nice, safe start, right? Wrapping the bubble wrap around yourself, right? The nice condom wrap, the Trojan around your team, Hunter Henry. Whereas Taysom Hill is the raw dog mentality, and you might not be able to pull out. That's how it goes with Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill going up against Atlanta, 37% roster on Yahoo. Taysom Hill's the type of guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he scored -4 points, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he kicked the teeth into the defense and dropped his nuts into their mouth. He teabagged them Master Chief style and was like the tight end 3 or even the tight end 1, right? A lot of the times you're not going to get the middle of the road game with Taysom, right? You're not going to get the 8 points, the 4 catches for 50 yards, right? You're not going to get the 8 points, the 9 points, the 10 points, right? You're either getting 15 plus or he's smacking you directly on the ass like you're in the Dodgers dugout and he scores 0 points or even worse, right? There's really no middle for Taysom Hill. Last week is the example of the upside, and we talked about the upside last week with Taysom Hill. We talked about it on the Q&A that I do every single Sunday. I do it every single Thursday before Thursday Night Football at around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we go live 12 Eastern Standard Time prior to the 1 o'clock kickoff on Sundays, and I talked a couple people into playing Taysom Hill because of the upside. 0 for 1 passing up against Carolina, but he had 5 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown, and 4 receptions on 5 targets for 41 yards as the tight end number 3. Now, the change at head coach could throw a complete and utter, turn this into a whirlwind, turn it into a tornado, right? It could be the dagger in the back of Taysom Hill, right? Changing, maybe Dennis Allen just loves him some Taysom Hill, or it could just stay the exact same. So again, if you're down bad at tight end, if you're shooting for the moon, you go with Taysom Hill. If you're not confident in, I'm scared, what if he gets me fucking 2 fantasy points? Then just play the next guy, which is Jonnu Smith, because Jonnu Smith's going to get you more than 2 points. Miami Dolphins going up against the Rams on Monday Night Football in LA, 9% roster on Yahoo. The last dance for the Dolphins. We lost to the Bills. It was a terrible loss. That fucking bastard, Tyler Bass, hit a 61-yard field goal in my face, and it made me want to do very bad things, and it was bad. It was sad, but I'm okay. It is what it is. The Dolphins have screwed me my whole entire life, so I'm not going to get too mad about it, but I was enraged on Sunday. But if they could beat the Rams, they're not back because they're never going to make the playoffs, but at least I will be happy. So Dolphins, Rams, tight end 12 last week for Jonnu, up against the Bills in Buffalo. 5 receptions on 6 targets for 46 yards. Back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97. Woo! Games with 6 targets, having Tua under center. Not going to sit here and pretend that Jonnu is like a must-start tight end by any means, but he's a fine bye-week fill-in, or he's good to get you the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points for you. Then we move on into Ron Rodgers, Mr. Discount, Double Check, Mr. State Farm, quarterback of the Jumbo Jets, going up against the Cardinals in Arizona. 43% rostered on Yahoo. Quarterback 7 last week up against the Texans, 22 on 32 attempts for 211 yards and 3 touchdowns, 2 to Garrett Wilson, 1 with the Jumpman logo, and then 1 to old fling Devontae Adams. Back-to-back games with 2 or more touchdowns and 0 turnovers. Are the Jets back? Probably not, because that's just what the Jets are. They're like the Dolphins. They're like the Cowboys. You buy in, and that is when they kick you directly in the ass. You finally buy in. You say, you know what? As a Jets fan, they've screwed you for years, right? My dad's a Jets fan. I have a lot of Jets fans, friends living in New Jersey. As a Dolphins fan, I know how it feels. Cowboys fans, I know a bunch of Cowboys friends. One of my best friends is a Cowboys fan. I know how it goes. Buy in, and you can't cash the check. This feels like the kind of game where you go up against Arizona, a sneaky, decent defense, and they smack you in the mouth. But ultimately, with how Rodgers has played, if the tide of the season has turned, I do believe Rodgers is startable. Even if they lose, he's going to be startable. So now we move on into the handcuffs, and we're talking about the nice pink fuzzy ones that you put on your girlfriend, your wife, your fiance, your mistress. I don't judge. During, when you're having some very nice, fun times. No, we're talking about handcuffs in fantasy football, and these are just 5 examples. These are guys, if you have the starting running back, this is the time of the season where you pick up the handcuff, because once you get deeper and deeper into the season, you want to have your handcuffs, because if something goes wrong in the playoffs, you want to have that insurance plan, and you don't want your league mate. You're like, oh my God, I have Bijan, and Bijan goes down. Knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but let's just be honest, that's a potential scenario. It's potential with any running back. Or, oh, I have James Cook. If he goes down, then you want Ray Davis, right? So you want the handcuffs here. So Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, Isaac Guerendo, Braylon Allen, Blake Corum are just 5 names. 5 of the guys that I feel like, hey, if their guy was to go down in front of them, these would be some of the better performers. So again, Guerendo might be at the top because, who knows if McCaffrey will play, but allegedly McCaffrey's going to play, so I'm not worried too much again on Monday. Maybe we have more news on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or before the game on Sunday. So these, again, I want to make it very, 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 very clear. Early on in the season, I'm not someone that likes to hold my own handcuff. I like to pick up other people's handcuffs, which you can do right now. But as of right now, especially if you're like a team like, hey, I'm locked and loaded for the playoffs, make sure you have your handcuffs. Don't hold these stupid fucking running or these wide receivers or, oh, my backup tight end. Don't fucking hold 2 tight ends unless there's someone on bye. Just add your handcuffs because, again, this is something that could change your team from, hey, your guy goes down to fuck the season's over to, all right, I still have a chance. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. And make sure you guys do check out Underdog promo code Notorious to claim your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you long time. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.